Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Achua and this is going to be one of the series where I compare two or more fragrances, give you my honest subjective opinion as to which one is the better alternative. There is always something that is like an advantage over the other in one way or the other, that I personally prefer and I guess want to recommend. So the first pair I have here are going to be Karaoke Crush by Sol de Janeiro and then Pear Pushing by Paris Corner. These two fragrances are very similar. They have the dominant note of pear with additional caramel, raspberry, apple in this one. Whereas in Karaoke Crush, we have some violets and then some white cedarwood. I remember when I first introduced Karaoke Crush on this channel, I mentioned the fact that it smelled similar to Pear Pushing. And now that it has been officially launched, I got this one when it was not launched, but it's been officially launched now, so everybody has access to it now. I still maintain the fact that these two smell so much alike, about 90% similar. However, when it comes to a realistic, mouth-watering, juicy pear scent, I think personally, I'm going to go for Pear Pushing here. Pear Pushing gives me that realistic, juicy, mouth-watering pear scent with that crisp apple and that hint of raspberry, sweet caramel. Whereas in this one, the pear is still there, but it is slightly watered down by the violet in it, A very beautiful scent nonetheless. I love them both. If I didn't have any of these two and I tested them together and I'm supposed to just pick one, I think I'm going to go with Pear Pushing just because this one gives me an intense, realistic pear scent. Whilst this one, I still get a violet. It's very beautiful nonetheless. I love these fragrances both. But in terms of picking one over the other, I think I'm just going to go with Pear Pushing because it gives me that realistic pear scent and it also lasts longer, upon further test or wear test. This one lasts so much longer as compared to Karaoke Crush. I mean, I can understand the fact that this is a body mist, so I didn't expect so much from it. However, if you're looking to saving some money, you want something like a perfume, an EDP sort of, fragrance than a body mist, I think you should go for Pear Pushing because it's going to give you that realistic, sweet, mouth-watering, juicy pear that you are looking for as compared to this, Nonetheless, I still highly recommend these two fragrances, but my preference is going to be Pear Pushing by Paris Corner. The next two fragrances I have here, I think I've spoken about the fact that I'm not really a fan of vintage radio as a fragrance for myself. I enjoy it as a room spray. I would have loved for it to be a candle, so for that reason, I don't really enjoy Vintage Radio by Lattafa on myself. However, I got a decant of Al Nashama also by Lattafa, and I so much prefer the Al Nashama version because this one is more fruity. I get the plum in this one more as opposed to this, which is predominantly that woody, Palo Santo, lavender, warm candle feel. It doesn't really feel like a fragrance to me. Whereas Al Nashama feels like a fragrance I would wear. But there's something I noticed about these two fragrances, upon further wear test, I just realized that although I prefer Al Nashama to Vintage Radio, I still don't see myself wearing Al Nashama, There's something about the scent profile it by itself that probably I guess it is not for me, but nonetheless, very beautiful fragrances. But my preference between these two is going to be Al Nashama over Vintage Radio, just because this one is like so intense in that Palo Santo, feng shui, spa-like sort of feel, as opposed to this Al Nashama, which feels so much perfumey, so much wearable in my opinion. So I think between the two, Al Nashama is going to be my pick if you ask me. The next pair here are going to be Caramel Cascade and then Eclair by Lattafa. These fragrances, I love them both. My first impression, if you have watched my first impression of this, it didn't give such a positive, it didn't throw a positive light to this. However, I will take it back. The opening wasn't good, I still maintain that the opening was very harsh with that intense alcohol, whilst the opening of this, I didn't find it like that, at all. After about 3 weeks or so in my collection, I can confidently say that it is very close to Bianco Latte, about 90-95% close. And the truth is, these two fragrances, like these two, Caramel Cascade and Eclair, they are both very similar to the original one. I don't know why people sometimes make it want to seem like we have to find, some differences somewhere. When I spray these two side by side, I barely get any difference. I barely get any difference between these two, Caramel Cascade and Eclair. The most significant difference I find between these two is the fact that Caramel Cascade comes off as a bit more milky, a bit more milky and a bit more musky, whilst this one, gives you that intense caramel with that spicy cumin, I believe. Aside those, I can barely detect any difference from these two. I never got that wood pear. I never got the mushroom, that other people are getting. I never got anything negative to associate with Caramel Cascade. So for that reason, for me, I would still highly recommend Caramel Cascade. I'll also recommend Eclair by Latafa. They are both amazing, identical dupes. When you spray these two, side by side, you can barely detect any difference between these two. And they both smell so much like Bianco Latte, with the difference being that this one is more milky, whilst this one, is more intense with that caramel, much more, let's say a little more intense. Aside that, these two fragrances are phenomenal. My personal preference is going to be Caramel Cascade, just because of that milk. There's something about this that I love so much. I love this one too, but there's something about the milk that is done so well in this one, the milk and the florals, that I sort of prefer just a tad bit over the Eclair. Nonetheless, I'm just going to recommend these two. If you, based on your budget, whichever one is available to you and your budget, I think you can just go for any of them. If you are a bit skeptical about the root beer mushroom nuances that people have reported that they get from this, then the best bet is to go with Eclair, and then just to be on the safer side. But for me, I never got that. I still love these two. If you ask me to pick amongst these two, I think Caramel Cascade is going to be my preference. So it's going to be Caramel Cascade over Eclair by Latafa. So that is going to be it for these two. The next pair I have here are going to be, okay, so these ones are not going to be a pair. They're going to be like a trio or three. And I have here Ajwad by Latafa. I have Ajwad by Latafa, Roses Vanille. Then I have here by Ad Azafaran, Quidwa. I believe it's Quidwa. I'll just put the bottle somewhere here. And then the third one is going to be a fragrance I recently received. That is going to be Max Vanille. And this is not opened. However, I've smelled this fragrance like over and over and over. I'm so acquainted with this. They all give you, these three, Alhambres, Max Vanille, Ajwad by Latafa, and then Out Azafaran's Kidwa. I believe that is how, Quidwa, I believe that is how it's pronounced. They all give off like very similar nuances, with the exception that the one from Latafa is known to have that metallic nuance, which, is a throw off for a lot of people. But I love this one, I love this one. What I would say is, amongst these three fragrances, my first choice or option is going to be from the Ad Azafaran, which is known as the Kidwa. This is simply smooth, it doesn't have that metallic nuance. It doesn't have anything screechy about it. It is the best Roses Vanille dupe I have come across. So much, close to Roses Vanille without any addition or twist. Others have didn't add any twist of their own. They just gave us like that smooth, beautiful Roses Vanille vibe. Well, whereas in Latafa, we can all attest to the fact that this one is a bit, it has a bit of a twist to it. Between those three, my personal preference is going to be Kidwa, for someone looking for Roses Vanille without any twist, like an excellent smooth version of Roses Vanille. This is going to be my number one, and it's going to be followed by Max Vanille, although I guess said that it feels like slightly cheap, but I'm putting this at number two because it doesn't have that metallic nuance that Ajwad has, which is like a big turn off for a lot of people. So I think probably because of that, if you want something more intricate, more complicated, then you can go for Ajwad, which personally is my second favorite aside the Kidwa. This one is going to be my second favorite. But if I'm recommending to others, I would say go for Max Vanille by Alhambra first before you go for this, just because of that additional metallic nuance that is like a throw for other people. So between these three, highly recommend Hidwa by Ada Saffron. That is going to be your best bet if you are looking for an exact, smooth, no twist to it Roses Vanille dupe. So Kidwa by Ada Saffron. The next group I have here is going to be these two pair, and God knows I never liked this fragrance, La African Drama. It's still not my favorite. It has improved like tremendously from the day I first smelled it till now. This has really improved surprisingly, and I sort of appreciate it, but it's still not something I like. However, there is this fragrance in my collection from Eupholia, Victory Vet, obviously a dupe for Vet Malachite by Armani. And these two fragrances smell so much alike. They give off a very tropical floral feel. They are both like tropical floral feel with the additional coconut, smoky sort of coconut santan lotion vibes to La African Drama, whereas the coconut nuance is missing in this. But they both have that tropical floral. They are like tropical florals, creamy florals. I think they have ylang and some other white florals. I think even some yellow florals. However, these two fragrances smell so much alike. When you spray them side by side, you can hardly detect any difference. The most difference, or the difference I find between these two, is the fact that this one has some petitgrain, petitgrain, which makes it quite green, green and a bit citrusy. And I get that petitgrain, in this one so much as compared to this, where I get that smoky, coconutty santan lotion vibes. But they smell about 85-90% similar. My preference is going to be Vet Malachite, or the dupe for Vet Malachite. This is a very polished, tropical floral scent. If you're going for a tropical scent, I know this one has been marketed as a tropical scent, which it is, but I just really do not like it as much, even after maceration, although I can confidently say it has improved, and I sort of, appreciate it so much better. My best bet is to go with any of the dupes from the Armani, the Vet Malachite dupes that I have come across. This one especially from Eupholia. This is called Victory Vet. This is smooth, smooth with that tropical florals, creamy, polished, a bit of that santan lotion vibes. This is phenomenal, and you also need to like petitgrain, which is also, known to be a citrusy floral with a green sort of, touch to it, but it's still a very beautiful fragrance. So between these two, I would say go for any dupe of Vet Malachite by Armani, because this one sort of, outshines this one a bit more to me. And I prefer the Vet Malachite, or the Victory Vet, version, as opposed to La African Drama. This is quite challenging at the beginning. It gets so much better. But even after maceration, I think I've even featured it in one of my Life After Maceration series, where I said it's better. It's still improving. I can see it's improved like 10 times more, but I still prefer this one, the Victory Vet, over that, in terms of the scent profile, although they are very similar. So that is going to be that. Then I'll go with these two here. And these two are supposedly dupes for Marc Jacobs Perfect Intense. These are going to be Yara Moi by Latafa, as well as Maison Alhambra's Precious Gold. These two are supposedly dupes for Marc Jacobs Perfect Intense, and I can really get that, Between these two, this is the most realistic, or the closest to Perfect Intense. This one gives me about 95%, accurate dupe to Perfect Intense, whereas this one gives me about 85%, just because it's not as nutty. That almondy nutty feel is a bit diluted down because of the white florals and that sort of, tropical coconut nuance it has in this. Whereas in this, I get that intense almonds, that beautiful intense almond is what separates these two. In the air, they smell alike, but you're going to get that intense almondy sweet, nutty nuance and Precious Gold by Alhambra. Whereas in this one, it's more watered down, but by that white florals and that, tropical coconuts. If you are looking for an almost identical dupe for Perfect Intense by Marc Jacobs, this is the way to go. Precious Gold by Alhambra, as compared to this, which to me is slightly off, slightly off. Nonetheless, I mean, if you already have this one, you might not even necessarily need this. But if you've not gone for any of these two and you're looking into getting just one of them, go for Precious Gold by Alhambra. The next pair I have here are going to be Nadine by Our Tanya and then Melodia or Melody by Orientica. I don't have that fragrance in my collection currently. I have smelled it a couple of times. I like that fragrance, but I just felt like it was a bit, pricey at the time. I wanted to get that. Coupled with the fact that I got another fragrance that I will show later, which I feel sort of give me the same sort of vibe, so it sort of killed my interest in getting the Melody from Orientica. This one is as close as Melody as you can get, and both fragrances have been reported to be dupes for Memo's Sintra. This one is a good one. The difference between this and Melody is in the opening. Melody has this intense green floral petitgreen neroli, bergamot at the top opening, which is quite intense and quite harsh. The opening for Melody is very, very harsh. To me, if you judge Melody from the start, you would, instantly throw it off. The dry down is the most beautiful, and when it settles down after 10-15 minutes with that petitgreen, intense green floral sort of thing going off, then you begin to enjoy it. Whereas in this one, I don't get that rough harsh opening of Melody. This one comes in very smooth. The opening is like excellent. It doesn't remind me of anything harsh and abrasive. It is very smooth from the beginning. To me, this and Melody are like 95% similar, with the exception that the opening for Melody is very harsh and off-putting, whereas the opening for this one is very tolerable, very likable, and then it gets very linear. Even at the dry down, it gets something like vanilla, whereas there's no vanilla at all in this fragrance. And between this and Melody or Melodia from Orientica, they both really remind me of D&G Devotion. They remind me of that. Guess that this one is more vanillic with that lime, citrusy nuance, and more polished, more refined as compared to this and the one from Orientica. But if you love this, you are most likely going to like this one. This is like the more floral version of D&G's Devotion. This and the other one, Melody, are like the more floral cousins to this, but they would definitely put you in the same mind frame. For me, between this and Melody, I'm just going to go with Nadine, simply because at the price point and the fact that it doesn't have that harsh opening of putting petitgreen or whatever it is at the beginning, that makes it quite uncomfortable. This one doesn't do that. So when you consider the price points, the fact that opening is missing from this one, and you're getting like an identical experience, the same fragrance, just go for Nadine. Just go for Nadine from Our Tanya. Is a better option if you are considering price. Is the better option if you're considering doing away with that harsh opening of Melody. Is a better option overall. So for me, between Nadine and Orientica's Melody, I think this is going to be the option I'll forever choose over that, and I'm glad to have this fragrance. It's a very good one. For the price, I cannot, complain. I cannot complain at all. So the next one I'm going to do is going to be Satwa from, I think Satwa is from Ada Safaran. If I'm not mistaken, wherever it is, I'll just put it up here. And then Nashane by Latafa. These two have been reported to be dupes for Annie by Nishane. I'll just go straight to the point. My preference is going to be Nashane, simply because it's much more likable, much more unisex, much more rounded, much more mass appealing as compared to Satwa, which feels slightly more masculine. This one feels slightly more masculine. There is something about this, I think it even has some lavender, if I'm not mistaken. I think it even has some lavender, so it goes in the masculine direction. Whereas when it comes to Nasheti, it is like well-rounded, very unisex. Men can appreciate, women can appreciate, very likable. It has like a very mass appealing sort of touch to it. Where this one is like, a little more boxed. This one feels like a little more boxed. It doesn't feel as versatile as this one is to me. Nasheti comes across as very versatile, but this one feels more like suited for like an alpha male sort of, feel. So for me, I would say if you're a man looking for something quite masculine leaning, go for Satwa. But in general, I would highly recommend Nasheti over Satwa just because of that versatile, mass appealing, likable quality that this one has. And these are just my subjective personal opinion. The next two fragrances I have here are going to be Secret Max by Cadlage and then Nuit de Arabia from Paris Corner. And these both are duping Arabian Tonka from Montal. And I'm quite surprised by the fact that, although these two fragrances smell alike, I prefer one to the other. And the reason why I prefer one to the other is because one feels a little screechy, whilst the other feels like a little more well blended, much more rounded. Reminds me so much of the original Arabian Tonka. Fortunately, I've been able to sample Arabian Tonka, and when I compare these two fragrances, the closest to me is going to be the Secret Max from Cadlage, just because it has that exact same DNA. Whereas this one also, will remind you, this one is also very similar to Arabian Tonka, but this one feels a little bit dusty. There's this dusty quality about it, and it's also like much more sweeter with that sugar oud rose, much more sweeter, like that intense sugary feel, whereas the sugar in this one is like slightly, tamed down. And then that saffron, that Baccarat Rouge saffron vibes is more amped up in this one. This one is so much closer to the original Arabian Tonka, whereas let's say about 95%, accurate dupe. Whereas the Noir de Arabia is going to give you around 80-85 because of that, much more intense sugar, a bit of a dusty quality to it. And it also gives me something very powdery to the extent that Noir de Arabia reminds me somehow of Junoon Noir by Haramain. There is something powdery and, something powdery about this, and even a little more vanillic, in my opinion. It doesn't have the note of vanilla, I believe, but there's something powdery, little vanillic, that reminds me of Junoon Noir by Al Haramain. Whereas when it comes to Secret Max by Cadlage, it doesn't really take me to that territory. This one reminds me highly of Arabian Tonka, that same sort of, Oud for Glory, Baccarat Rouge, DNA mixture, somewhere. It reminds me of that, it gives me like 95% accurate dupe. It is also smoother. It gives me a very smooth blend, whereas there is something slightly squishy about this, If this one had not come up, I think everybody would have been happy about this. My personal recommendation is going to be Secret Max from Cadlage over Noir de Arabia from Paris Corner. So these are the two Arabian Tonka dupes that I have. And the next pair, they are not going to be paired. They are a trio, 3 in number, and these have all been compared to Imperial Valley from Giza. I have no idea how that fragrance smells, but I have here Red Jewel from the brand AMD. It's quite, unpopular, or not. It's not as popular as the other Middle Eastern brands that we know. This is called Rare Jewel from AMD. Then we have here Pear from Paris Corner, and the last one here is going to be from Cadlage, and this is going to be Empire Empress. These are 3 fragrances that are all reported to be dupes for Imperial Valley, Giza Imperial Valley. The original fragrance by itself is known to be this leathery, smooth, vetiver leather, fresh sort of, fragrance. And I get it in all these 3 fragrances, but there are differences. And the difference is that when it comes to Empire's Empress, you get a fruity pineapple, like a smoky pineapple accord that you get in something like Hachivat or even Kaid Alfasan. You get something like that, as well as that smooth leather, that, smoky sort of, pineapple. It has some smoky pineapple accord in this. which is missing from the other two. So I don't know which one is the closest to the original. Honestly, I don't know which one is the closest to the original, but these three smell alike. Just that this one is like the fruity version with that smoky pineapple accord, whereas the Red Jewel to me is the strongest and the loudest with that leather vetiver mossy. This one feels like it has some moss in it, whereas I don't get moss from the rest of these two, or like the mossy nuance is like very toned down, but in Red Jewel you get like a very intense mossy. It's quite loud. It is the loudest and the spiciest. It has a spicy sort of tone to it, which I feel is like watered down when it comes to these two. And when it comes to the last one, the Care from Paris Corner, that is going to be the lighter version. This one is the least long lasting, but it has the most, concentration of that leather accord, amongst the three. This one has the most concentration of the leather. This one has the most concentration of the spice and the moss. Whereas this, from Cadillac has the most concentration of that pineapple accord, but the three of them somehow come together to smell alike. Amongst these three, my personal preference is going to be the one from AMD, which is Red Jewel. This is the spiciest, the most, masculine one amongst them. I wouldn't say the most masculine because they all smell quite masculine, but there's something about this that is like loud, and strong. There's some strength in this. There's some strength in this that I prefer over these two. The one from Cadillac feels like a blend between Hashivat and then that's, Care by Paris Corner, a blend of that. So I get something quite familiar because of that pineapple accord I get in this one. Whereas in the original Care from Paris Corner, it feels like light but more leathery, So this one, Rare Jewel feels like a better blend, not a better blend, but like a combo of those two, but more spicier and much more intense, So I think amongst the three, my preference is going to be from AMD Red Jewel. The next two are not going to be a comparison per se, but I think I have something that can replace Not Stag, if you're looking for it and you're not finding, because I get a lot of people saying they cannot find Not Stag Expression by Paris Corner, and people also complain about the price being quite high. I have something that, reminds me or put me in the same mind space as Not Stag Expression, and this is going to come from Paris Corner, and this is going to be Kissa Blue. Kissa Blue, I think, is quite underrated. When you spell these two together, they are going to remind you of each other. Although, obviously my preference is going to be Not Stag. But if you are thinking about the price, or you are not finding it and you want something quite similar, I say go for Kissa Blue by Paris Corner. This I'm quite, impressed by because it gives me a very aquatic, citric, woody, fresh vibes with a very juicy orange, it gives me something like a lime, lemony, orangey, zesty feel. It doesn't give me 100% Not Stag Expression, but it puts me in the same mind frame. To me, this is about 60% similar, it's about 60% similar because this one is going to give you that intense orange, zesty, playful. This one is also going to give you a very fresh, aquatic, effervescent, lemony, orangey vibe. Very refreshing. They come across as very refreshing, whereas this one feels more playful, but this one also feels like a little more masculine because of that woody, vetiver sort of, vibes. But all I'm trying to say is if your budget is not up to that for Not Stag and you want something with a similar experience, go for Kissa Blue by Paris Corner. It's a great alternative. I think it's quite underrated. For the upcoming summer, I would highly recommend Kissa Blue by Paris Corner. Although for my personal preference is going to be Not Stag Expression by Paris Corner. And the last two pair I have here are going to be Liam Grey from Lattafa and also from the Lattafa Niche Emirati line that I got to try a couple of days back, Antique. I don't have that here, but just coming from my scent memory, these two fragrances are very similar. To me, I wouldn't say choose one over the other. I find very little difference between Liam Grey and Antique by the Niche Emirati line. They are almost like very identical. The only thing I would say is that one is like on the pricey side as compared to this. Choose between these two fragrances based upon the price point. If you're looking for something more affordable, go for Liam Gray because it's much more affordable than the Antique or Antique from the Niche Emirati line. Whereas the Antique, is going to give you something like, like a collector's piece because of the bottle, much more intricate detail with the bottle and presentation, and this one being a little more simplistic. They both are almost identical. I can barely tell the difference between Liam Gray and then Atik by Latafa Niche Emirati. They are going to serve you the same purpose, the same experience. Nothing, none of them outshines the other. I would say maybe Atik, outshines this one in terms of performance because this one is like quite moderate when it comes to performance. But Atik, when I tried it, was slightly better in terms of the performance. But scent wise, quality wise, I think these two are at par. So choose between these two based on their price points, whether you want something like a collector's piece or a collector's item, or you want something that you can, quickly run through and get another bottle. If you're looking for affordability, go for Liam Gray. If you're looking for collector's piece because of the bottle, go for Antique or Antique by Niche Emirati. So that is going to be it for today. I'm still gathering quite a few of them to bring you something quite similar, and I hope this video found you well. These are simply my personal subjective opinion upon experiencing these fragrances, playing with them over time, getting myself acquainted, and trying to figure out which one outweighs the other one in terms of performance, scent-wise, price point. I think these are the ones that I would highly recommend. So that is going to be it for today. And I hope this video found you well. Please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you in my next one. Take care. Bye-bye.